Have you ever made a forum thread or a Reddit post or something of the sort asking people a question like, what do you think is the most likely next playable race or class? If you did, most of the answers you'd get under it were probably, oh, I want to play Arakoa, or I want to play an ogre, or ethereals. And don't get me wrong, I'd like to play them too, but that is not the question I asked. It's going to be relevant in a moment, I promise. My point is, I learned early on in my life, not from making Reddit posts, that was just a topical example, is that people seem to often have trouble distinguishing between things they want to be true and things that are actually true. It's going to be relevant in a moment, I promise. My point is, what I learned early on in my life, not from making Reddit posts, that was just a topical example, is that people seem to often have trouble distinguishing between things they want to be true and things that are actually true. I could right now make a big rant about religion, but that would maybe be a little too off topic. This all is relevant because it seems to come up a lot when people tell you what you shouldn't or should RP, in World of Warcraft for instance. In this case it's less about truth and more about canon. I don't know if this is going to be a whole series, but there seems to be a lot of those things that people advise you about WoW RP, that the majority seems to be completely convinced about for no good reason. Majority, or at least a loud minority. It's hard to tell, really, without making, I don't know, scientific research on people's attitudes in WoW RP. Maybe I could do that, but I don't know if that detail is really that important right now. And I mean things like warlocks are kill on sight in major cities, or the converse, Scarlet Crusaders are not kill on sight, and you can just walk around Stormwind wearing hate symbols that are icons of a known hostile faction. Outside of Warcraft itself, GMs going like, Dragonborn are kill on sight in small villages because they think peasants are stupid and don't know anything about the world more than 5 meters outside of their village. Or, one of my favorites, and the main topic of today's video, resurrections are very rare and very hard and require extreme power. One can't be excused for thinking this is the case, because on the surface it seems to be. When Lei Shen was being resurrected, it required a very powerful witch doctor performing a special ritual on a secluded island. Never mind that the circumstances of his death and what he was very different and very special. Most canon characters, once they die, they stay dead. When Vol'jin died to forced story faction balance, you didn't see a priest popping up and going, oops, sorry, I was out of mana, res coming right up. So on the surface, it seems consistent. And it is what players want to see, so they focus on that. But let's look at the actual lore a little bit more closely. There are a couple of quests in Wrath of the Lich King that did give me a pause when I really considered what is happening. Back in Borean Tundra, you are tasked with finding Farseer Grimwalker, and when you find him, things are not looking great for him. You find that he got captured by Magnators and Kobolds, and he got eaten. There's nothing left but bones. Thankfully, you do get to talk to his spirit, and after a few quests, you return his remains to the other shaman, Spirit Talker Snarlfang. And you think, oh, they're going to give him a proper burial so he can safely move on. But no. Snarlfang says, and now I will return him to the living where he belongs. And just like that, no questions asked, the dude gets resurrected. He was eaten to the bone. Even in Dungeons and Dragons, where resurrections are not that uncommon, for adventurers at least, that is a little extreme. When you are at that point, it would probably require a true resurrection, an actually rare and expensive spell. But here, it's not even a problem. Example number 2. Just next door, in Dragonblight, we find a Taunka village, slaughtered and conquered by the Nerubians, the undead Nerubians. Over the course of a few quests, including one defending a stupid banner that sometimes dies extremely easily when Blizzard messes with the scaling, you end up freeing their captured chieftain, Ronog Icemist. And when he's freed, he does not give his people their deserved rest. He yells, "Rebirth comes, my brothers! Rise, rise and fight once more." And he just mass resurrects the whole village. Like, it's not even Thrall or Alexstrasza or some major OP lore hero. Like, this is just a guy. Sure, he's a Toonka chieftain, but just resurrecting a whole village sounds like it should be difficult. But what if I told you this is not even the most egregious example? Our next quest is in Icecrown. There we meet two unlikely allies, a gnome Death Knight, Dark Rider Arley, and the Draenei Paladin, Crusader Olakin. They seem to be friendly enough, and when Olakin has an unfortunate incident fighting the Scourge, Arley sends us to save him. Here's a small problem with that. Olakin has not just been killed, he has been cut into small pieces and sawn into multiple abominations. You know, the huge undead monstrosities. So we, of course, identify all the pieces easily, put him back together, and Arley raises him back. And you'd think, being raised by a Death Knight, he'd be some patchwork half-finished monster. But no. He's fine. He's not even undead. He just returns to life. You may think, Blizzard didn't bother to make a special model for it, but they could have just given him the Death Knight skin and classify him as undead. But no, he returns to being just as he was, and it's never addressed again. It's not just Wrath of the Lich King either. Azuragos was being killed repeatedly by the loot-hungry adventurers and kept coming back. And no, this one is not just he respawns for gameplay reasons. There was actually a quest to talk to Azuragos' spirit, who seemed to have entered some sort of relationship with the spirit healer that kept bringing him back. And of course he later returns alive. It was a crucial part of his actual story. In Blasted Lands in Classic and repeated in Cataclysm, near the conclusion of the Razalik storyline, you also recollect pieces of the demon hunter Loramus Thalipides, and sure enough, resurrect him so that he can fight Razalik and contain him within his body. He of course returns later, still possessed, so this quest did happen, and wasn't ignored like half of vanilla quests. I could keep pointing out many examples, many of them in fairly inconsequential and small quests, and no one questions what happened. No one even reacts. Holy crap, the Death Knight raised the dude, and he's fine! No one reacts, because it's not strange. I mean, it's strange to us, but characters in the game do not react, because no, to them it's not strange. To them it's normal, because it's not our world. One of the most common excuses to keep ignoring these is gameplay and story segregation. Things that happen in the game don't have to be canon in the lore. They don't have to. But unless they are contradicted by something elsewhere, there is no reason to believe they are not canon. We're not even talking about a player having a spell to resurrect another player. These are specific quest stories that are not contradicted elsewhere. These things happened, and they happen a lot, and they happen to relatively mundane, low-level characters. The only reason to believe they didn't, the only reason to still believe that resurrection is rare, is because you don't want it to be true. This is where we're coming back to my introduction. People come into the game with certain expectations. Ones built on things we are familiar with, tropes from other works of fiction, or just how things are in real life. In the real world, death is death. It's the final end. At a certain point, the damage is irreversible, at least with modern science, though the progress of science has made things previously thought impossible now possible. So when we come into a fictional world with these expectations, we have a pre-built sense of immersion. And everyone's sense of immersion is different. And that's fine. We all like different things. It's fine to not like these quests being there. It's fine to say they shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be canon. And to some degree, I agree. Like the Death Knight I keep bringing up, I do that because it is just so ridiculous. It's been an established fact in canon that once you are undead, and I'm going to wager being sold into active abominations counts as being undead, you are undead. Any resurrections would just bring you back to being undead. That's why you can't just raise Forsaken back into being living humans. And yet here he stands, without a comment. This should not be possible, but it is. And if it's so easy to bring people back, why isn't this done when major lore characters die? Sure, Varian got disenchanted, but Vujin's body was still there, and you can make up excuses like, well, they couldn't heal him, so he'd just go back to dying from the poison. These are excuses. In the end, what this is inconsistency. We go back to immersion. The writers and often players want death to matter. They want it so that when a major character dies, they stay dead, and the death matters. And so do I. In my TTRPG, I made sure that dead characters stay dead. Mal'Ganis, Tychondrus, Archimonde, Muradin, even if they had excuses for not being dead, I wanted them to stay dead, to keep the stakes of the story, and make their deaths have meaning. Believe me, I understand wanting things to be a certain way. This channel is about things I wish were true. Things I redesigned for my TTRPG because they broke my immersion, my suspension of disbelief, my sense of stakes in the story. But here's what I didn't do. I didn't say they were canon. I didn't lambast people online, calling them special snowflakes and edgelords and whatever insults go around the RP community these days, because they said that events of Shadowlands happened in canon. I don't like these things being canon. I don't like these things being true. But they are. Because that's how WoW sometimes is. Because that's how life sometimes is. Things you don't want to be true are true. You don't want death to be final. You want death to be easily subverted by a very common utterance, you can say, to bring someone back. But sometimes things you don't want to be true are true. Was this just a rant about a pet peeve with the RP community? Maybe. Was this whole video just an excuse to make a philosophical statement through a familiar medium? Like fiction is supposed to, like science fiction and fantasy fiction was made to do. And just express my frustration about the state of the world? Maybe. But unfortunately, in real life, we can't just up and leave and make our own world. We'll have to fix this one.